Hello, everyone. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. I'll tell you what, the moment I heard Charlotte say she planned to spend most of her summer at the Metro Court pool, I couldn't help but raise an eyebrow. Maybe it's just because I've watched General Hospital for so many years, but I've learned that nothing on this show is ever as innocent as it first appears. A summer by the pool sounds relaxing, sure. But when Gio is the lifeguard on duty, my mind starts connecting dots that the writers may or may not want us to notice. Call it instinct, call it experience. I just have a feeling we're supposed to pay attention. The first thing that crossed my mind wasn't even Gio. It was Emma. If Charlotte starts finding reasons to be at that pool day after day, Emma might have more to worry about than she realizes. Now, I'm not saying Charlotte is already chasing after Gio, but I've seen enough soap stories to know how quickly admiration can turn into a crush. Before you know it, someone who was only supposed to be enjoying the sunshine is suddenly rearranging their whole day just to catch a glimpse of one person. That's the kind of slow burn General Hospital has always loved. What makes this possibility even more interesting is that Charlotte suddenly finds herself with a clean slate. Earlier this year, she and Danny shared a few sweet moments, but they wisely decided friendship was the better path. Considering their distant family connection, that was probably for the best anyway. So now Charlotte is free to look elsewhere, and that's where things start getting complicated in my eyes. When I think about Gio, I can understand why a young girl like Charlotte might notice him. He's kind, responsible, calm under pressure, and he carries himself with a confidence that naturally stands out. Working as a lifeguard only adds to that image. People tend to admire someone who looks dependable, especially during those carefree summer days around the pool. It wouldn't surprise me one bit if Charlotte started seeing him as someone special, even if Gio himself never intended to send that message. And here's the part that really keeps me thinking. Charlotte has always been the kind of young woman who feels things deeply. When she cares about someone, she doesn't do it halfway. That's both one of her greatest strengths and one of her biggest weaknesses. I've watched her throw her whole heart into people before, and sometimes that passion has taken her down roads that became much more complicated than anyone expected. That's why I can't simply brush this possibility aside. As I watched these pieces come together, I found myself wondering if the writers were quietly planting seeds instead of waving a big flag in front of us. Around here, that's usually how the biggest stories begin. One innocent conversation, one familiar face seen every afternoon, one teenager who suddenly finds herself looking forward to tomorrow for reasons she can't quite explain. Before long, emotions have a way of growing faster than common sense, and that's when everybody around them starts feeling the consequences. And if Charlotte really does begin developing feelings for Gio, then Emma may not even realize what's happening until the situation has already become awkward. That's the tricky thing about young emotions. They don't always announce themselves. Sometimes they just quietly grow stronger while everyone else is busy believing nothing has changed. Folks, I've watched enough summers in Port Charles to know that the warm weather usually brings far more than sunshine. The more I thought about this storyline, the more I realized Gio may not even see the trouble coming. That's the thing about genuinely kind people. They don't wake up in the morning looking to lead someone on or create misunderstandings. They simply treat everyone with warmth, patience, and respect. I've met people like that in my own life, and I'll tell you something, they often become the center of situations they never intended to create. Folks start reading far more into a smile than was ever meant, and before long, feelings get tangled up in ways nobody expected. That's exactly why Charlotte worries me in this situation. If she spends every afternoon at that pool, she's naturally going to be around Gio more than almost anyone else. At first, it could be nothing more than casual conversations. Maybe Gio asks how she's doing. Maybe he notices when she seems upset. Maybe he offers a few words of encouragement the way any caring young man would. That's simply who Gio is. He's never struck me as someone who ignores people who are struggling. The problem is that kindness doesn't always look the same through everyone else's eyes. Someone who feels emotionally secure sees kindness for what it is. But someone who's lonely, confused, or desperately searching for stability can start believing it means something much deeper. I've seen that happen in real life, and that's why this possibility immediately caught my attention. Another reason I can't stop thinking about these two is that they actually have more in common than people might realize. Gio is still trying to come to terms with learning that Brooke, Lynn, and Dante are his biological parents. That's the kind of discovery that changes the way a person sees their entire life. No matter how mature he tries to be, those emotional wounds don't heal overnight. Then I look at Charlotte, and honestly, her family history is even more complicated. She's grown up with 2 mothers, 3 fathers, and years of uncertainty about where she truly belongs. That's an incredible amount for any young person to carry. When you've lived through that much instability, you naturally find yourself drawn toward people who seem dependable and understanding. That's why I don't think any attachment Charlotte develops would happen all at once. I imagine it starting very quietly. She begins looking forward to seeing Gio every afternoon. She stays at the pool a little longer than she planned. She finds small excuses to start another conversation. Eventually, she notices that the best part of her day is simply knowing he'll be there. That's how emotional attachments often grow. They don't arrive with fireworks. They build little by little until someone realizes they're thinking about one person far more than they intended. Meanwhile, Gio probably believes he's simply being supportive, never imagining that Charlotte could be interpreting his kindness in a completely different way. Then my thoughts immediately turn to Emma, because this is where the situation could become genuinely heartbreaking. I honestly enjoy watching Gio and Emma together. Their chemistry feels natural, their conversations are easy, and they bring out the best in one another. They remind me of those young couples you root for because nothing about their relationship feels forced. Unfortunately, this is General Hospital, where peaceful romances rarely stay peaceful for very long. If Charlotte starts developing feelings for Gio, Emma may not even recognize the warning signs until those feelings have grown into something much bigger. What concerns me most isn't simply that Charlotte might have a crush. Teenagers develop crushes all the time. What worries me is Charlotte's emotional history. We've already seen how deeply fixated she became on Anna. That wasn't ordinary teenage behavior. It showed that once Charlotte becomes convinced of something, she has a hard time letting go. If she begins believing that Gio secretly returns her feelings, she could start interpreting every smile, every conversation, and every act of kindness as proof that they're meant to be together. That's how misunderstandings become dangerous, especially when emotions begin replacing reality. Emma could quickly become the person Charlotte blames for standing in the way of what she believes should be hers. Instead of seeing Emma as Gio's girlfriend or someone he genuinely loves, Charlotte might begin viewing her as an obstacle. Knowing Charlotte's complicated relationship with the Devane family, that possibility makes me even more uneasy. Old resentments have a way of mixing with new emotions, and once those feelings collide, it's difficult to predict how far someone might go. I truly hope the writers handle this story with care instead of turning Charlotte into nothing more than another villain. Deep down, I still see a young woman who's carrying years of emotional pain that no teenager should have to face alone. Sometimes people who seem difficult are really just searching for acceptance, stability, and someone who makes them feel safe. That doesn't excuse bad decisions, but it does make me want to understand where those decisions come from. At the end of the day, I've watched General Hospital long enough to know that the biggest stories usually begin with the smallest moments. One extra conversation, one lingering smile, one person finding reasons to stay just a little longer than everyone else. Those tiny moments often become the foundation for the biggest emotional storms. If that's where this story is headed, I don't think Gio will be the one creating the conflict. I think he'll simply find himself trapped between 2 very different young women, one offering him a healthy future, and the other slowly convincing herself that destiny is on her side. And if that happens, I have a feeling the storyline is only getting started.